Manifestation doesn't slow down because you're doing too little. It slows down because of one subtle habit you repeat every single day, often with good intentions, that quietly tells reality to wait. This habit sounds harmless. It sounds responsible. It even sounds spiritual. But at the level where the quantum field actually responds, this one thing creates delay, friction, and unnecessary distance between you and what you're trying to experience. Most people think manifestation is blocked by doubt or negativity. That's not accurate. Reality doesn't stall because you feel uncertain. It stalls because of how you position yourself in time every time you speak, internally and externally, about what you want. Not what you say out loud to others, but the tone, timing, and posture embedded in your language. Language is not communication. Language is calibration. Your nervous system listens to your words as instructions about what state you are in right now. And the quantum field listens to your nervous system, not your vocabulary. That means you can say all the right things and still broadcast a signal of delay without realizing it. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The way you speak about your life is often placing your desire perpetually in the future. Even when you think you're being positive, even when you believe you're being patient, even when you're trusting the process, when you say things like, "It's coming," "I'm working toward it," or "I'll have it soon," your mind hears hope, but your body hears absence. Your nervous system interprets those phrases as evidence that what you want is not here yet. And the field responds accordingly, not as punishment, as precision. From a neurobiological standpoint, the brain does not differentiate between imagined delay and real delay. If your internal language constantly references later, someday, or soon, your nervous system remains oriented toward waiting. Waiting is not neutral. Waiting is a state of suspended readiness. And suspended readiness creates low-level tension. That tension becomes part of your energetic signal. From a quantum perspective, this matters deeply. The field responds to coherence in the present moment, not to effort, not to desire, not to intention alone. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and bodily state are aligned now, not projected forward. When your language keeps placing fulfillment in the future, you are unintentionally signaling that coherence has not been reached yet. The field does not rush to complete what your own system has declared incomplete. This is why manifestation often feels slow even when you're doing everything right. The one thing that needs to stop is not effort. It's speaking from a state of separation. Separation sounds subtle. It doesn't sound like self-sabotage. It sounds like realism. It sounds like humility. It sounds like patience. But energetically, it keeps you positioned outside the state you want reality to reflect. Acceleration begins the moment this changes. Not when you force confidence, not when you pretend you already have something you don't believe, but when your language shifts from anticipation to embodiment. And this shift is not about affirmations. It's about identity. The nervous system doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you sound like you're already living. The field doesn't reorganize around requests. It reorganizes around stabilized states. This is why some people seem to manifest effortlessly. They're not asking differently. They're speaking from a different place internally. Their language carries no tension, no leaning forward, no subtle begging of time to move faster. They're not waiting for life to catch up. Life is responding because there's nothing inside them signaling that it hasn't already begun. This is the distinction that changes everything. And once you see it, you start noticing how often your own words, even the quiet ones, are telling reality to slow down. You begin to hear the future tense, the conditional tone, the almost there posture that keeps your nervous system suspended. In the next part, we'll break down exactly how this habit forms, why the brain reinforces it automatically, and how to shift your language without forcing positivity in a way that makes acceleration feel natural instead of artificial. Because manifestation doesn't speed up when you want harder. It speeds up when you stop speaking like you're still waiting. The brain does not experience language as meaning. It experiences language as instruction. This is one of the most misunderstood points in manifestation, and it explains why so many well-intentioned people slow down their own results without realizing it. When you speak, even silently, your nervous system doesn't analyze your words philosophically. It registers orientation. Are you here or are you leaning toward later? Hope feels good emotionally, but neurologically, hope often keeps the system unfinished. Hope implies movement towards something that is not yet stabilized. And whenever the brain senses not yet, it keeps the body in preparation mode. Preparation mode is not alignment. It's readiness. And readiness is still tension. From a neuroscience perspective, this matters because the brain is constantly predicting the next moment based on internal cues. Language is one of the strongest cues it uses. If your internal dialogue is framed around soon, almost when working on or getting there, your brain predicts a future state instead of settling into the present one. That prediction keeps your nervous system slightly activated. That activation becomes your baseline. When activation is present, the body behaves as if something is missing. Muscles remain subtly engaged. Attention remains forward-leaning. Breath patterns shift without awareness. You don't feel stressed, but you also don't feel complete. And the quantum field responds to that exact state. This is why manifestation feels delayed even when you're calm and optimistic. Optimism does not equal coherence. Coherence requires completion, not anticipation. The brain reinforces this loop automatically. Each time you speak in future-oriented language, the prediction circuits strengthen. The system learns that fulfillment is always one step ahead. Over time, this becomes identity. You don't just want something. You become someone who is always in the process of getting. That identity broadcasts waiting. Waiting is not neutral in the field. Waiting is a signal that the system is not settled yet. And the field mirrors that settlement, not the desire behind it. This is where people get confused and frustrated. They feel patient. They feel trusting. But their internal language still carries motion toward a future state. That motion creates a constant micro-signal of incompletion. Acceleration cannot occur inside incompletion. This doesn't mean you should pretend you already have everything. That creates cognitive dissonance and more tension. The shift is subtler than that. It's about removing temporal distance from your language, not forcing certainty. Notice the difference between saying, "I'm becoming someone who lives with abundance," versus, "I live from abundance." The first one feels humble and realistic. The second one feels grounded. The brain responds very differently to each. The first keeps the system in rehearsal. The second places the system in embodiment. Embodiment is what collapses delay. From a quantum perspective, language is part of the observer effect. How you describe yourself internally affects how probability organizes around you. If your observer is always positioned just before arrival, probability keeps arranging itself as almost. This is why reality seems to speed up dramatically for people who change nothing externally but shift internally. They stop rehearsing life and start inhabiting it. Their language loses urgency, explanation, and justification. They stop narrating progress. They simply exist from a stabilized state. When language stops pointing forward, the nervous system relaxes. When the nervous system relaxes, coherence increases. When coherence increases, the field has a clear signal to respond to. Acceleration is not something you cause. It's something that happens when friction leaves the system. The mistake is thinking friction comes from doubt or fear. Most friction comes from subtle future orientation disguised as hope. Once that drops, movement no longer needs to be requested. Reality was never slow. It was following your timing. And the moment your language stops placing fulfillment ahead of you, reality no longer has instructions to wait. In the next part, we'll explore the exact shift in language and internal posture that removes this delay. Not by sounding positive, but by sounding complete in a way your nervous system actually believes. Because manifestation accelerates not when you speak louder, but when you stop speaking from the future. The shift that accelerates manifestation is not about saying better words. It's about changing the position you're speaking from. Most people try to upgrade their language at the surface level, swapping negative phrases for positive ones, but keeping the same internal posture. And posture is what the nervous system actually broadcasts. You can say, "I trust the universe." While your body is still leaning forward, you can say everything is working out while your system is still braced. Reality does not respond to the sentence. It responds to the stance behind it. The stance that slows everything down is the stance of explaining. Explaining why something hasn't happened yet. Explaining how it will happen. Explaining what you're doing to get there. Explanation is subtle effort. It's a signal that something is still unresolved internally. When you feel the urge to explain your future, your nervous system is still trying to secure it. From a neurobiological perspective, explanation activates control circuits. It keeps the brain engaged in prediction, justification, and monitoring. Those circuits are incompatible with embodiment. You cannot be fully present while narrating progress towards something else. This is why the language that accelerates manifestation often sounds almost boring. It lacks drama. It lacks enthusiasm. It lacks future orientation. It doesn't try to convince anyone, including yourself. It sounds neutral, grounded, finished. Instead of "I'm manifesting a new chapter," the language becomes "I'm in a different chapter." Instead of "things are about to change," it becomes "things are different now." Instead of "I'm learning to trust," it becomes "I trust." These shifts may seem small, but neurologically they are massive. The brain registers them as completion, not aspiration. Completion tells the nervous system there is no need to prepare. Preparation stops, tension drops, coherence increases. That coherence is what the quantum field responds to. Another critical element is removing urgency from speech. Urgency doesn't always sound stressed. Sometimes it sounds motivated, excited, or passionate. But urgency always implies lack. It implies that something must arrive soon for the system to feel okay. Aligned language does not ask time to hurry. This is why people who are truly aligned speak slower, simpler, and with less emotional charge. Their words don't pull the future closer. They anchor the present more deeply. And the deeper the present is anchored, the faster reality reorganizes. This is counterintuitive for the mind. The mind believes speed comes from momentum. But in manifestation, speed comes from stability. Instability requires buffering. Stability allows immediate response. From a quantum perspective, when your language stops fragmenting time, probability collapses more cleanly. There are fewer contradictory signals. The observer is no longer oscillating between now and later. Reality doesn't have to average conflicting instructions. It receives one clear signal. You may notice that when this shift happens, you stop talking about your desires altogether. Not because you've given up, but because there's nothing to manage verbally. Desire has already been metabolized emotionally. This is why silence often precedes acceleration. Silence doesn't mean inaction. It means the internal dialogue has settled. And when dialogue settles, the nervous system enters a receptive state. Reception is not passive. It's a state of readiness without tension. This is the level where reality begins to approach you. Opportunities appear without being chased. People bring ideas to you. Circumstances rearrange without planning. And none of it feels shocking because your internal language has already accepted the state as normal. This is how manifestation stops feeling like magic and starts feeling mechanical in the best way. Nothing mystical changed. You stopped narrating distance. And once distance disappears from your language, the field has no reason to keep it in your experience. In the next part, we'll move into how to practice this shift daily without monitoring yourself and how to recognize when your language has quietly slipped back into waiting so acceleration doesn't stall again. Because the moment you stop speaking like you're on your way, reality stops treating you like you haven't arrived. The most important part of this shift is that it cannot be practiced through constant self-correction. The moment you start monitoring every word, every thought, every sentence, you reintroduce effort. And effort immediately slows the signal again. Acceleration does not come from control. It comes from integration. This is why the practice is not about catching yourself every time you speak in future-oriented language. That creates tension. Instead, the practice is about noticing how your body feels after you speak. The nervous system gives feedback instantly. Language that accelerates feels settling. Language that delays feels tightening. You don't need to analyze the sentence. You only need to notice the state it leaves behind. When your language is aligned, there is a sense of completion that follows, not excitement, not relief, just a quiet sense that nothing else needs to be added. When language slips back into waiting, there's a subtle aftertaste of restlessness. A feeling that something still needs to happen. That feeling is your signal. From a neurobiological standpoint, this works because the brain learns through association, not instruction. Each time you speak from a grounded state and feel the body settle, the nervous system reinforces that pattern. Over time, that pattern becomes automatic. You don't think about how you speak. You simply speak from where you are. This is embodiment. The mistake many people make is trying to sound aligned. Alignment is not a performance. It's a baseline. And baselines are built through repetition without pressure. The less you try to get it right, the faster it stabilizes. This is why silence becomes important in this phase. Not forced silence, but natural reduction of internal commentary. When you stop narrating your progress, the nervous system stops preparing for evaluation. There is nothing to prove. So there is nothing to brace for in this state. Even your thoughts change texture. They become fewer, slower, and more neutral. Not empty, just efficient. Thought returns to its proper role. Responding, not managing. When language slips back into delay, it usually does so during moments of uncertainty. A pause, a quiet period, a lack of immediate feedback from reality. The old reflex is to explain, justify, or reassure yourself verbally. That reflex is what you're releasing. Instead of correcting the language, you let the moment be incomplete without commentary. This is a powerful reprogramming act. The nervous system learns that incompletion does not require narration. It learns that silence is safe. And once silence is safe, language naturally reorganizes itself around presence. From a quantum perspective, this is critical. The observer effect is strongest when observation is neutral. The moment you emotionally monitor outcomes, you influence probability. When observation becomes relaxed, probability organizes without distortion. This is why acceleration often happens right after people stop doing the work. They didn't stop being aligned. They stopped interfering. You may notice that as this practice integrates, time begins to feel different. Days feel fuller but shorter. Events cluster. Things resolve themselves quickly. Not because you asked for speed jar, but because you stopped instructing reality to slow down. This is also when manifestation stops feeling personal. You're not manifesting against the world or from the world. You're participating in it. Movement feels mutual. The final sign that this shift is stabilizing is this. You stop wondering whether you're doing it right. That question only exists when alignment is still fragile. When alignment stabilizes, the question dissolves on its own. You don't need to remember to speak differently. You simply don't speak from waiting anymore. And once waiting exits your language, it exits your experience. In the next part, we'll close this entire arc by integrating why this shift works so reliably, how it ties identity, nervous system, and the quantum field into one loop, and how to stabilize it long-term without discipline or force. Because acceleration isn't a technique, it's the natural response to a signal that no longer asks reality to pause. At a certain point, you realize that manifestation was never about getting reality to respond faster. It was about removing the internal signals that were telling reality to slow down. This is the integration moment where language, identity, and nervous system collapse into a single state. Language is not separate from identity. The way you speak reveals where you locate yourself in the timeline of your life. When your language is future-oriented, your identity is future-oriented. When your language is embodied, your identity stabilizes in the present. Identity is what the field actually responds to. From a neurological standpoint, identity is a collection of repeated internal states. It is not a belief. It is not an affirmation. It is the emotional and physiological posture you return to most often. When that posture signals incomplete completion, reality mirrors incomplete completion. When it signals stability, reality reorganizes around it. This is why manifestation accelerates when identity shifts quietly, not when effort increases. The nervous system plays the role of gatekeeper. It decides whether a state is safe enough to maintain. If your language constantly suggests that fulfillment exists later, the nervous system never settles. It stays alert, slightly forward-leaning, subtly engaged. That engagement fragments coherence. Once language no longer positions fulfillment in the future, the nervous system receives permission to relax. And relaxation is not disengagement. It is coherence. Coherence is when all parts of the system are broadcasting the same message. Thoughts, emotions, and physiology stop contradicting each other. The field receives a unified signal instead of a conflicted one. This is where acceleration becomes inevitable. From a quantum perspective, probability collapses cleanly when the observer is stable. Instability in the observer creates unstable outcomes. Stability removes friction. The field does not reward effort. It reflects consistency. This is why people who experience rapid shifts often cannot explain how it happened. They didn't do anything new. They stopped doing something old. They stopped narrating separation. They stopped rehearsing arrival. They stopped waiting. Waiting was the delay. When waiting dissolves internally, time reorganizes externally. Events cluster. Responses arrive faster. Movement feels smoother. And because there is no emotional charge around outcomes, nothing feels shocking or overwhelming. The system is ready to receive. This readiness is not created through discipline. It emerges naturally when identity stops being future-based. You are no longer becoming someone. You are someone. And that shift changes everything. This is also why acceleration feels sustainable at this level. There is no burnout, no emotional crash, no spike followed by collapse because nothing is being forced. Nothing needs recovery. Reality is not being pushed to comply. It is responding to coherence. When this integration completes, manifestation stops feeling personal. It is no longer my desire versus reality. It becomes participation. You move with life instead of toward it. And the most telling sign that this shift is real is this. You stop trying to protect it. There is no fear of losing alignment, no urgency to maintain the state. You trust it because it feels natural. This is embodiment. This is the point where language becomes simple, identity becomes quiet, and reality becomes responsive. Not because you learned a better technique, but because you stopped sending mixed signals. In the final part, we'll close this entire journey by anchoring how to stabilize this acceleration long-term, not as a practice you repeat, but as a baseline you live from, and how to return to it effortlessly whenever life pulls you away. Because manifestation doesn't accelerate once. It accelerates permanently when the system no longer asks reality to wait. At this stage, there is nothing new to add. And that in itself is the confirmation that acceleration has already begun. When manifestation truly speeds up, it doesn't feel like discovery. It feels like remembering. You're not learning a secret. You're releasing a pattern that was quietly telling reality to hold back. This is the final integration. Understanding that acceleration is not something you chase. It's something that happens naturally. When the system no longer speaks from lack, distance, or anticipation. When your language settles into presence, your nervous system stabilizes. When your nervous system stabilizes, identity stops fragmenting across time. And when identity stabilizes, the field responds without delay. Nothing here required force. Nothing here required discipline. Nothing here required belief. It required coherence. This is why this shift is sustainable. You're not managing your thoughts. You're not correcting yourself constantly. You're not performing alignment. You're living from it. And because it feels natural, it lasts. Life will still move. Challenges will still appear, but they won't pull you back into waiting. You'll notice that even when things slow down externally, you don't. Your language remains grounded. Your body remains settled. Your identity remains present. That's when acceleration becomes permanent. From this place, manifestation no longer feels like something you do. It feels like something that happens around you as a consequence of how you exist. You stop measuring progress. You stop checking signs. You stop asking whether you're aligned. You already are. This is also where patience transforms. It no longer feels like waiting. It feels like availability. You're not holding your breath for reality to change. You're breathing inside the version of yourself that already knows it will. And that knowing is not mental. It's embodied. If you want to deepen and stabilize this state, not just understand it intellectually, but integrate it into how you live, decide, speak, and move through the world. This is exactly why Quantum Rebirth was created. It's designed to help you dissolve future-based identity patterns and rewire coherence at the nervous system level. Alongside it, the Quantum Grimoire offers grounded practical rituals that support alignment in real life, not just moments of insight. You'll find more about both in the pinned comment when it feels aligned to explore. But regardless of what you choose next, remember this manifestation didn't accelerate because you did something new. It accelerated because you stopped doing one thing. You stopped speaking like you were still on your way. And the moment you did, reality no longer had instructions to wait. It didn't rush. It didn't resist.